In the royal court of the Lunar Kingdom, all eyes were fixed on a single figure, Seraphina of Hollowmere, standing in a gown the color of blood and destiny. It was her 21st moon, the night the prophecy would finally be fulfilled, the night the Alpha King would claim his fated mate and secure the throne's magic for another generation. Seraphina's raven black hair cascaded over bare shoulders, the crimson silk of her dress flowing like liquid fire against pale skin. She'd prepared for this moment her entire life. Every lesson in courtly grace, every studied smile, every prayer to the moon goddess. The hall held its breath. Alpha King Kaelin Draeger sat on the obsidian throne, wrapped in brown leather armor that seemed designed to repel rather than welcome. Dark hair fell across a face carved from brutal angles, and his silver eyes, wolf-bright and cold, fixed on Seraphina with an intensity that should have felt like recognition. Instead, it felt like warfare. The sacred bond snapped into place between them, visible to every wolf in the hall, as golden light that arced from his chest to hers, binding their souls in the way the moon had ordained. For one heartbeat, hope blazed in Seraphina's chest. Then Kaelin rose from his throne, and that hope died. "I reject you," his voice echoed through stone and bone. "You are unworthy to stand as my queen. This bond is a mistake." The hall erupted in gasps. Elders clutched their ceremonial staffs. Warriors exchanged shocked glances. This had never happened. An Alpha King rejecting his prophesied mate. Seraphina stood frozen, the bond tearing inside her chest like claws through flesh. She should have fallen, should have begged, should have broken the way every rejected mate in history had broken. Instead, she lifted her chin. Her dark brown eyes, wet with unshed tears, met his silver gaze with devastating calm. And in a voice that carried to every corner of the silent hall, she said, "I accept your rejection, Alpha." The bond between them didn't just break. It burned, golden light turning to ash, the sacred connection dissolving into nothing as the magic recognized her acceptance. Kaelin's face went white. Behind the cold mask, something cracked. Pain, regret, desperation. But it vanished before anyone else could see it. "Leave my presence," he commanded, voice rough. Seraphina turned. The red dress trailed behind her like blood on marble as she walked through the parted crowd. No one spoke. No one dared. They watched the prophesied queen walk out of her destiny, and they didn't see the black veins spreading across Kaelin's hands beneath his armor, or the way he gripped the throne so hard the stone cracked. They didn't know he'd just killed them all to save her life. Before we dive into what happens next, let me ask you something. Have you ever made a sacrifice so brutal, so absolute, that the person you loved thought you betrayed them? That's what Kaelin just did. And Seraphina, she's about to become something he could never have imagined. If you're already hooked on this story of rejection, power, and a love that might be too broken to fix, hit that subscribe button for Judy's Romance Library right now. Because what comes next is going to blow your mind. We're talking ancient bloodlines, impossible power, and a queen who doesn't need saving. Trust me, you don't want to miss where this goes. Now, let's see what happens when Seraphina reaches the Borderlands. The moment the doors closed behind Seraphina, Kaelin collapsed. His beta, Corvin, was at his side, instantly catching the Alpha King before he hit the throne. "My king! Get them out!" Kaelin snarled, his voice already weakening. "Everyone! Now!" Corvin didn't question, just barked orders that emptied the hall in seconds, leaving only him and the king's most trusted guards, wolves who'd sworn blood oaths of silence. Kaelin tore at the leather armor with shaking hands, exposing his chest. The black veins had spread. What had been contained to his ribs now crawled across his heart, pulsing with corruption that made his wolf howl in agony. The curse was accelerating. How long? Corvin's voice was carefully controlled, but fear leaked through. Days. Maybe a week before it reaches my brain. Kalen looked up at his beta, letting him see the truth in his silver eyes. The moment I claimed her, the curse would have transferred through the bond. She'd have been dead by morning. So you rejected her to save her life. Corvin knelt, examining the spreading darkness. And now you're dying anyway. Better me than her. Kalen forced himself to stand, even as poison burned through every vein. Better me than the woman the moon chose to save this kingdom. You're a fool, a voice said from the shadows. Elder Morgana emerged from the alcove where she'd been watching. Ancient, white-haired, terrifying. The last living wolf who remembered magic before the Great Purge. The prophecy didn't say she'd save the kingdom as your mate, Morgana continued, eyes blazing with knowledge Kalen didn't possess. It said she'd save it as herself. And you just sent her away to do exactly that. Ice flooded Kalen's veins. What do you mean? Seraphina of Hollowmere is not just a fated mate, boy. She's a boundless. One of the last of an extinct bloodline. Your bond wasn't destiny. It was a seal, keeping that power dormant until she was strong enough to wield it. Morgana's smile was bitter. The moon didn't send her to you for love. She sent her to you so you could reject her and break the seal. The words hit Kalen like physical blows. You're saying I set her free. Morgana's voice echoed with prophecy. And now, she'll become either your salvation or your destruction. It all depends on whether she forgives you when she returns. When she returns? Oh, she'll return. The old wolf's eyes gleamed. They always do. The question is, will she come back as your queen or your executioner? They dumped Seraphina at the edge of the borderlands like garbage. King's orders, the guard said, not meeting her eyes. Exiles don't get escorts back. The borderlands, where rogue wolves hunted in packs, where magic twisted natural law into nightmare, where the rejected came to die. Seraphina watched the carriage disappear into the forest, taking the last piece of her old life with it. Then she screamed. The sound tore from her throat, rage, grief, humiliation, everything she'd held back in that throne room. It echoed through dead trees and gray sky, and something inside her answered. Power. Not wolf magic. Something older. Something that had been sleeping her entire life, caged behind the bond she'd just accepted the breaking of. Blue-white light exploded from her hands. Seraphina stared at her palms, watching energy dance across her skin like living fire. This wasn't possible. She wasn't powerful. She was barely trained. Just another noble daughter groomed to be decorative and obedient. A growl cut through her shock. 3 rogue wolves emerged from the trees, massive, feral, their eyes red with bloodlust. No humanity left, just beast and hunger. They saw easy prey, a girl alone in a red dress, crying in the wilderness. They lunged. Seraphina didn't think, just reacted, throwing her hands up in instinctive defense. The power that erupted from her was annihilation. Blue-white light consumed the rogues mid-leap, reducing them to ash before they hit the ground. The shockwave of energy flattened trees in a perfect circle around her, leaving scorched earth and the acrid smell of ozone. She stood at the center of devastation, dress torn, hands glowing, heart hammering. What am I? Magnificent, a voice rasped. An old man stepped from the shadows beyond the blast zone, ancient, scarred, wearing robes that marked him as exiled. He studied Seraphina with eyes that had seen too much. You're a boundless, he said simply. I thought your line extinct. I don't know what that means. It means, girl, he smiled, that you're no longer just the rejected mate of an alpha king. You're a weapon, and if you survive long enough to master that power. He gestured at the devastation she'd caused. You'll be the most dangerous creature in this realm." Seraphina looked at her still glowing hands, at the ashes of the rogues, at the scorched earth. Then she looked back at the direction of the capital, where Kalen sat on his throne in his brown armor, probably already forgetting about her. "Teach me," she said. The old man's smile widened. "Oh, this is going to be fun." The old man's name was Aldrich, and he'd been waiting in the borderlands for 40 years. "For what?" Seraphina asked, sitting across from him in the ruins of what had once been a boundless temple. "For one of your kind to be cast out." He poured bitter tea into cracked cups. "The prophecy said a boundless would rise when the kingdom needed her most. I just didn't expect her to arrive in a ball gown." Seraphina looked down at the ruined red silk. It seemed like a lifetime ago she'd dressed for the ceremony. "What exactly is a boundless? A bloodline older than kingdom, older than the Alpha lines." Aldrich's eyes grew distant. When the moon goddess first created wolves, she gave some the gift of transformation. But to others, the very first, she gave raw power. No wolf form, just pure, concentrated magic that could reshape reality itself. "That's impossible. You just obliterated 3 feral rogues with a thought." He raised an eyebrow. "Want to talk about impossible?" "Point taken." "The boundless were hunted to extinction 300 years ago," Aldrich continued. "The Alpha Kings feared them. How do you rule through strength when someone can unmake you with a gesture? So they declared boundless an abomination and burned every family to ash. But I survived. Your line hid, suppressed the gift, married into noble families and hoped no one would notice." He leaned forward. "Then the moon decided she needed a boundless again. So she made sure you'd be born, made sure you'd meet the Alpha King, and made sure," his smile was sharp, "that he'd reject you and break the seal keeping your power dormant." The words hit like physical blows. The rejection was part of the prophecy? The rejection was the whole point, girl. You needed your bond broken to access what you truly are. Aldrich stood, gesturing for her to follow. "Now come. If you're going to survive what's coming, you need to learn control, and fast." What followed were weeks of brutal training. Aldrich taught Seraphina to channel the power without destroying everything around her, to shape it into shields, weapons, focused strikes, to sense magic in others, wolf bonds, curses, ancient spells. And one night, she sensed something that made her blood run cold. "There's a curse," Seraphina whispered, hands pressed to the earth, feeling magic ripple through the realm. "On the Alpha King. It's God's, it's killing him." Aldrich nodded grimly. "The rotting curse. Ancient magic from the Lunar Rebellion. Enemies who want to destroy the throne from within. It's been growing in Kalen for years. The only thing that could have cured it was the fated bond," Seraphina finished, understanding crashing down. "If he'd claimed me, the bond would have burned the curse out. Or killed you both trying." Aldrich's voice was gentle. "The curse transfers through mate bonds, Seraphina. If Kalen had claimed you, you'd have shared the poison. And without boundless power, you'd have died." Her hands clenched. "So, he rejected me to save my life. And doomed himself in the process." Seraphina thought of Kalen in his brown armor, silver eyes cold and distant. Thought of how his hands had trembled just slightly when he'd spoken the rejection. How something had broken behind that controlled mask. He'd chosen to die rather than risk killing her. "Can I save him?" The question came out barely audible. "With boundless power? Yes, but it'll cost you." Aldrich's expression was grave. "You'll have to pour your magic into his curse, burn it out from the inside. It'll hurt, might even kill you if you're not strong enough." "Then I'd better get stronger." Seraphina trained like she was possessed. Every dawn until dusk, mastering power that should have taken years to control. The pain of rejection fueled her. The memory of Kaylin's face fueled her. And underneath it all, a question. Would she save him, or would she let him die for what he did? She didn't know the answer. But 6 weeks after her exile, she felt the curse spike through her connection to the kingdom's magic. Kaylin was dying, fast, and an army was coming. The Lunar Rebellion, the enemies who'd cursed him, were marching on the capital, sensing their prey was finally weak enough to kill. Serafina looked at Aldrich. "I'm going back. To save him? To decide." She called her power, letting it wrap around her like armor made of light. If he deserves saving? Kaylin was dying, and everyone knew it. The black veins had spread across his entire chest, crawling up his throat, reaching for his brain. He could barely shift anymore, barely stand without Corvin's support. The curse was winning. And the Lunar Rebellion knew it. Their army gathered at the borders, thousands of rogue wolves and dark magic users led by Malachi the Corrupted, a wolf who'd sold his soul for power. The king's advisors urged surrender. His generals prepared for massacre. Kaylin prepared to die, standing. "My king." Corvin entered the royal chambers where Kaylin was being strapped into armor for what would likely be his last battle. "The scouts report the rebellion will reach the capital by nightfall. Then we meet them at the gates." Kaylin's voice was rough, the curse eating at his throat. "If this is my last stand, I'll make it memorable." "There's another way." Elder Morgana appeared, ancient eyes knowing. "Call for Serafina." Kaylin nearly laughed. "The woman I publicly humiliated? The maid I rejected? You think she'd come save me?" "I think," Morgana said softly, "she's the only one who can. If you'd stop being too proud to beg." Pride. As if Kaylin had any left. But he wouldn't call her. Wouldn't drag Serafina back into the nightmare he'd tried to spare her from. If he died, at least she would be free. That night, Kaylin stood at the battlements in his brown armor, now battle-scarred and blood-stained, watching Malachi's forces surround the capital. The curse burned through him, each breath agony. Corvin gripped his shoulder. "It's been an honor, my king." The honor was mine. The rebellion charged, and they met them with everything they had left. Serafina felt Kaylin dying, through the ash of their broken bond, through the boundless power that connected her to the kingdom's magic. She felt his life force guttering like a candle in a storm. The curse was at his brain. Hours left, maybe less. She stood on a cliff overlooking the capital, watching fires bloom as the rebellion's siege began. Aldrich stood beside her. "This is your choice, Serafina. Save him or let him die. Either way, you'll have to live with it. Save the man who rejected her, who humiliated her, who broke the bond that should have been sacred, or let him die and inherit a broken kingdom." Serafina closed her eyes, reaching through magic and memory to find the truth. And she saw it. Kaylin, alone in his chambers the night before the ceremony, black veins already spreading, an elder telling him the curse would transfer through the mate bond. Kaylin making the choice, reject his fated mate and die alone, or claim her and kill her. He'd chosen her life over his own. The rejection had been sacrifice, not cruelty. Her eyes snapped open, glowing blue-white with power. "I'm going," she said. "To save him? To save my kingdom." Serafina called the magic, letting it lift her from the ground in a display of power that would have terrified her weeks ago. "He's still my king, and I'm still his queen, whether he wants to admit it or not." She flew toward the capital like a meteor, blue-white light streaking across the night sky. The rebellion forces looked up in shock, and Serafina descended into the siege like the wrath of the moon herself. Kaylin was on his knees in the throne room, surrounded by bodies. They'd held the doors for hours, but the rebellion kept coming. His warriors were exhausted. The curse had finally reached his brain. making every thought swim through pain. Malachi stood over him, dark magic swirling around his corrupted form. The great Alpha King, brought low by his own pride. My pride? Kaelin coughed blood. Kept my mate alive. Your mate? Malachi laughed. The girl you rejected? She's probably dead in the Borderlands by now. All that prophecy, wasted. Kaelin smiled through broken teeth. You really didn't do your research. What? The doors exploded inward. Blue-white light flooded the throne room, so bright every wolf had to shield their eyes. When it faded, she stood there. Seraphina. But not the girl in the red dress. This was something else entirely. Her dark hair whipped in a wind that came from nowhere, eyes glowing with power that made the air itself vibrate. Energy wrapped around her like armor, and when she spoke, her voice echoed with the weight of ancient magic. You made a mistake coming here, she said. Malachi recovered first, snarling. The rejected mate returns? How touching, boys. Killer. 20 rebellion wolves charged. Seraphina didn't even move, just flicked her wrist, and blue-white light consumed them. Not killing, but binding, wrapping them in magical chains that slammed them into the walls. She walked forward, power radiating with each step, until she stood between Kaelin and Malachi. You're dying, she said, glancing back at Kaelin. Not to Malachi, to him. The curse is at your brain. I can feel it. Seraphina. Kaelin tried to stand and failed. I'm sorry for everything. I only wanted... I know. She cut him off, eyes still glowing. We'll discuss your terrible decision-making later. Right now. She turned back to Malachi. We have pests to exterminate. Malachi threw everything he had at her. Dark magic that had corrupted dozens of wolves, that had created the curse-killing Kaelin. Seraphina absorbed it like it was nothing. Then she attacked. Kaelin had seen many battles in his life, many displays of power, but nothing compared to watching Seraphina fight as a boundless, pure magic given form, reshaping reality with gestures. Her power so absolute it made Malachi's corruption look like candlelight against the sun. She didn't just defeat him, she unmade him. Blue-white light wrapped around the corrupted one, burning away the dark magic, the stolen power, everything that had made him monstrous. When it faded, only ash remained. Seraphina turned to the remaining rebellion forces. Leave, now, or become dust. They fled. Silence fell over the throne room. The siege was over, and Kaelin's mate, his powerful, terrifying, magnificent mate, walked over and knelt beside him, hands glowing as she pressed them to his chest. This is going to hurt, she said. Then she poured her power into the curse. Burning the curse out of Kaelin was like fighting a living thing. It fought back, tried to consume Seraphina's magic, tried to drag her down into corruption. But she was boundless. Older magic, stronger magic, magic that had existed before curses were even invented. She burned it all away. Kaelin screamed. His body arched against the floor as blue-white light consumed the black veins, purging poison that had been killing him for months. Seraphina held him down, gritting her teeth against the backlash. Feeling the curse try to transfer to her, it couldn't. She was too strong. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably minutes, the last black vein dissolved. Kaelin collapsed, breathing hard, skin clean for the first time in months. Seraphina sat back, exhausted, power flickering. You came back, he rasped. Of course I came back. She looked at him, really looked at the man who'd rejected her. You're my king, and I'm your queen, whether you wanted me or not. I always wanted you. His silver eyes met hers, raw and honest. That's why I had to let you go. The curse. If I'd claimed you... I know. Serafina pressed her fingers to his lips. I know about the curse, about the choice you made, about all of it. Then you know I'm a fool. Yes. She smiled, exhausted but genuine. The biggest fool in the realm. You tried to save me by sacrificing yourself, when what I needed was for you to trust me enough to face it together. He caught her hand, holding it against his chest where his heart beat strong and steady. Can you forgive me? Serafina didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. Because forgiveness was complicated when you'd been publicly humiliated, exiled, and nearly died in the borderlands. But also, he'd loved her enough to die for her. Ask me again, she said finally. When you're not bleeding on the floor of your throne room. Kaelin actually laughed. Short and rough, but real. Fair enough. Corvin appeared with healers and guards, all staring at Serafina with awe and terror. The rejected mate who'd returned as something beyond their understanding. As they helped Kaelin to his chambers, Serafina stayed in the throne room, looking at the obsidian seat of power. The prophecy had been about this moment. Not the rejection, not the exile. This. The boundless queen standing in the wreckage of her enemies, having saved the kingdom that cast her out. But what happened now? 3 days after the siege, Kaelin was strong enough to walk. The curse was gone. His strength was returning. The kingdom was safe. But the most important thing, the most terrifying thing, was facing Serafina. She'd taken up residence in the queen's chambers, which had stood empty for his entire reign, and he found her there at sunset, standing on the balcony overlooking the capital she'd saved. "May I come in?" Kaelin asked from the doorway. She glanced back, eyes still faintly glowing with residual power. "It's your castle." "It's yours." He stepped inside, closing the door. "You saved it. Saved me. Saved everyone. The castle belongs to you more than it ever belonged to me." Serafina turned fully, leaning against the balcony railing. The sunset painted her in golds and reds, making her look like the warrior queen she'd become. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why what? Why reject me if you knew it would kill you?" Her voice was steady, but Kaelin heard the hurt beneath. "Why not just tell me about the curse? Trust me to make my own choice?" "Because..." He moved closer, stopping a careful distance away. "Because the elders said the curse would transfer through the bond. That claiming you would poison you too. And I couldn't..." His voice broke. "I couldn't watch you die because of me. So you chose to die alone." "Yes." "That was stupid." "I know. And cruel." "I know that too. And you humiliated me in front of the entire court. Let them think I was unworthy when you were really trying to save my life." Her eyes blazed. "You made me feel like nothing, Kaelin." "I know." He took a risk, stepping closer, close enough to feel her power hum against his skin. "And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. But I need you to understand, rejecting you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Looking into your eyes and calling you unworthy when you were the most worthy, most precious thing in my life." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face. "It broke me, Serafina, but breaking you would have destroyed me." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I should hate you. You'd be justified. But I don't." She opened her eyes and they were wet. "I understand why you did it. God's help me. I even admire the sacrifice. But understanding and forgiving are different things. I know. And trusting again after that level of betrayal, even well-intentioned betrayal." She pulled back slightly. "That's going to take time. I have time." Kaelin dropped his hand but held her gaze. I'll wait as long as it takes. Years if necessary. And if I decide I can't? If I decide that what we had is too broken to fix? The question was a knife, but he deserved the pain. Then I'll accept it, he said quietly. Just like you accepted my rejection. And I'll be grateful for every moment you choose to stay as my queen, son. Even if you never choose to be my mate. Seraphina studied him for a long moment, power flickering in her eyes, reading him in ways only a boundless could. Then she did something that stopped his heart. She stepped closer, rose on her toes, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Kaelin froze, terrified to move, to breathe, to do anything that might make her pull away. But when she didn't immediately retreat, he dared to respond, kissing her back with all the gentleness he possessed, hands carefully framing her face, thumbs brushing away the tears that had escaped. When they finally parted, they were both breathing hard. That wasn't forgiveness, Seraphina whispered against his lips. That was acknowledgement of what we could have been, what we might still be. If you can prove I can trust you, I'll prove it. Kaelin pressed his forehead to hers. Every day for the rest of our lives, I'll prove it. Good. She pulled back, but took his hand. Because I'm not the same girl you rejected, Kaelin. I'm a boundless queen now. And if we do this, if we rebuild what was broken, it's going to be on equal terms. No more decisions made to protect me, no more secrets. Equal terms, he agreed. Partners. Partners. She smiled, small but genuine. Now come on, the council is waiting, and we need to discuss what happens to a kingdom that just discovered their queen is a boundless. As they walked toward the council chambers hand in hand, Kaelin realized something. He'd rejected Seraphina to save her life. And in doing so, he'd created exactly what the kingdom needed, a queen powerful enough to save them all. The moon goddess had planned this from the beginning. He just hoped Seraphina would forgive him for being her unwitting pawn. The council chamber fell silent when Kaelin and Seraphina entered together. Not just because they were holding hands, though that certainly caused whispers, but because Seraphina had made no effort to hide her power. Blue-white light flickered around her like a living aura. Her eyes still glowed faintly. And when she took her seat, not in the designated queen's chair to the side, but in the second throne beside Kaelin's, no one dared object. My lords and ladies, Kaelin began, voice strong for the first time in months. You're aware that Queen Seraphina saved the kingdom from the Lunar Rebellion's siege. Murmurs of agreement, nervous glances at Seraphina. What you don't know, Kaelin continued, is that she did so as a boundless, one of the last of an extinct bloodline and the most powerful magic user this realm has seen in 3 centuries. The chamber erupted. Boundless are abominations. They were hunted to extinction for good reason. The throne cannot align with forbidden magic? Seraphina let them shout themselves hoarse. Then she stood, and the sheer pressure of her power made every voice cut off mid-word. Let me make something very clear, she said, voice echoing with magic. I'm not asking permission to be your queen. I'm not seeking approval or validation. I saved your lives, your homes, and your king. What I am doing is offering you a choice. She looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Accept me as I am. Boundless, powerful, and fully equal to your Alpha King. And we'll build a kingdom stronger than any that came before. Reject me. Her smile was sharp. And I'll leave. Take my power with me, and you can face the next threat yourselves. Silence. Then Elder Morgana stood, ancient and wise. The old laws called boundless abominations because Alpha Kings feared power they couldn't control. But perhaps, she looked directly at Kaelin, The true strength of a king is knowing when to share power rather than hoard it. She knelt, pressing her fist to her heart. I accept Seraphina of Hollowmere as my boundless queen. One by one, the council followed. Even the ones who'd laughed at her rejection knelt. Acknowledging what she'd become, Kaelin stood beside her, hand finding hers. The fated mate bond may have been broken, he announced. But I'm asking, formally, before witnesses, for permission to court Queen Seraphina properly, to earn her trust, to prove myself worthy of the woman I once rejected in my pride and fear. He turned to her, silver eyes intense, and if she never chooses to renew that bond, I'll still serve beside her. Because having Seraphina as my partner and queen is worth more than any sacred bond. Seraphina's throat tightened. This was what she'd needed to hear. Not claims of destiny or fate, but choice, agency, the acknowledgement that she was powerful enough to make her own decisions. I accept your courtship, she said formally, then softer. Don't screw it up. His smile was brilliant. I won't. That night there was a celebration, the first real joy the kingdom had felt in months. And later, much later, when the halls were quiet and the moon hung full and bright, Kaelin found Seraphina on the battlements where this had all begun. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, coming to stand beside her. I was thinking, she said slowly, about the girl who stood in that throne room in a red dress, expecting her destiny to be handed to her. And I'm glad she got rejected. She looked at him, saw the flinch. Because that girl was weak, Kaelin. She'd been taught to be decorative, obedient, to find her worth in being chosen. She called her power, letting it dance around them. But the woman who was forged in the borderlands, who discovered she was boundless, who saved a kingdom and rewrote the rules, she smiled up. She's so much stronger than destiny ever planned. You terrify me, Kaelin admitted. In the best possible way. Good. Seraphina leaned against him, letting him wrap his arms around her carefully, reverently. A queen should terrify her king at least a little. And if I want to kiss you again? His voice was low, rough with want he was barely controlling. Then ask permission. May I kiss you, my terrifying, boundless queen? She tilted her face up. Yes. This kiss was different from the first, deeper, more confident, tongues touching as months of suppressed desire finally found outlet. Kaelin's hands splayed across her back, pulling her flush against him, and Seraphina felt his control fracture just slightly, the wolf rising, wanting to claim and mark and possess. But he pulled back before it went too far. Forehead against hers, breathing hard. We should stop, he said, voice strained. You said you needed time. I won't push. Seraphina appreciated that, the restraint, the respect. But she also felt the echo of their broken bond humming between them, wanting to rebuild itself, not through fate or prophecy, but through choice. Time, she agreed, but not distance. She traced the line of his jaw, feeling him shudder. Court me properly, Kaelin. Show me who you are when you're not hiding behind duty and armor. Let me show you who I've become, and we'll see if what we build is stronger than what the moon originally planned. It will be. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Because this time, we choose it. They stood together in the moonlight, the Alpha King and his boundless queen, broken and remade, with a kingdom to rule and a love to rebuild. And for the first time since the rejection, Seraphina felt hope. Not the desperate hope of a girl waiting for destiny, but the fierce hope of a woman who knew her own power and had chosen to stay anyway. The second coronation was nothing like the first ceremony. This time, Seraphina wore midnight blue instead of red, a color she'd chosen herself, embroidered with silver stars that matched the boundless magic glowing faintly beneath her skin. This time, Kaylin wore formal robes instead of armor, open, welcoming, standing beside her as equal rather than above her as authority. And this time, when they stood before the court, it wasn't to enact a prophecy but to solidify a choice. Do you, Kaylin Dragor, Alpha King of the Lunar Kingdom, take Seraphina of Holomir as your bonded mate, your queen, your equal partner in all things? Kaylin's silver eyes never left hers. I do. Not because the moon decreed it, but because I choose her. Every day, for the rest of my life, I choose her. And do you, Seraphina, boundless queen, accept this bond freely given? Seraphina thought about the girl in the red dress who'd been rejected, about the woman who'd been forged in exile, about the queen who'd saved a kingdom, about the 6 months of courtship, Kaylin proving with actions instead of words that he trusted her, respected her, loved her for her power rather than despite it, about the nights they'd spent talking until dawn, rebuilding trust conversation by conversation, about the careful progression of physical intimacy, kisses that grew deeper, touches that grew bolder, both of them learning each other's bodies with reverence and hunger in equal measure. About last night, when they'd finally made love for the first time, and the broken bond had started to knit itself back together, not through magical compulsion, but through genuine connection. I do, she said clearly. I choose this bond. I choose this partnership. I choose him. Kaylin stepped forward, and this time when his hand cupped her face, there was no rejection in his eyes. Only love, fierce and absolute. He kissed her before the entire court, deep and claiming and tender all at once, his tongue sliding against hers in a way that made heat pool low in her belly. His hands splayed across her back, pulling her flush against him. And she felt the new bond between them flare to life, golden light wrapping around them as the moon goddess blessed what they'd chosen to rebuild. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Kaylin's eyes had gone wolf-bright with desire. Mine, he whispered against her lips. Ours, Seraphina corrected, because I claim you right back. His smile was brilliant. The court erupted in howls of approval, no longer scandalized by the powerful queen, but celebrating her. That night, in chambers they now shared, Kaylin unlaced Seraphina's coronation gown with reverent hands. I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making up for that rejection, he murmured, pressing kisses along her collarbone as blue silk pulled at her feet. I'm going to hold you to that. Seraphina pulled his shirt over his head, running her hands over the chest that no longer bore black veins. But right now, I just want you. You have me. He lifted her, carrying her to the bed they'd share for the rest of their lives. Always. Later, tangled in silk sheets with her mate's arm wrapped around her waist and his steady breathing against her neck, Seraphina thought about destiny. The prophecy had said a boundless queen would save the kingdom. It just hadn't specified that she'd need to be rejected, exiled, and remade first. But maybe that was the point. Maybe true power, the kind that changed kingdoms, only came when you stopped waiting for destiny to choose you and started choosing yourself. She'd accepted the rejection, and in doing so, she'd claimed something better than fate. Freedom, power, choice, and a love that was hers because they built it, not because the moon decreed it. As she drifted to sleep in her mate's arms, Seraphina smiled. Let the story say the Alpha King rejected his queen. She knew the truth. He set her free, and she came back powerful enough to save them both. And that's where Seraphina and Kaylin's story ends. For now. From the rejected mate who walked out with her head high, to the boundless queen who brought an empire to its knees. From the girl who was told she was unworthy, to the woman who rewrote the rules of power itself. If you loved this journey of rejection, transformation, and a love rebuilt on choice instead of fate, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Which moment hit you the hardest? Was it the rejection, The moment she unleashed her power, or when Kaylin finally admitted the truth. And if you're craving more wolf shifter romance with fated mates, second chances, and heroines who refuse to stay broken, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got forbidden bonds, rejected mates who come back stronger, and alpha kings who learn the hard way that power shared is power multiplied. Drop a crown in the comments if you're Team Serafina and tell me, did Kaylin deserve forgiveness? Or should she have made him grovel longer? Thanks for spending this time with me in the world of boundless queens and alpha kings who learn to share their thrones. Until next time, remember, rejection isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of your power. Now go forth, queens and kings. Your destiny is waiting, and it's yours to choose.